There's something about silence that speaks louder than words. I used to think it was the quiet moments that bound a marriage together. Late-night whispers, shared coffee on sleepy Sundays, soft laughter behind closed doors. Now I realize silence also masks the things we're too afraid to confront. The silences in our home had changed, and I didn't notice until it was already too late. My name is Michael. I've been married to Emily for almost 9 years. We live in a modest 2-story house in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside of Portland. I'm a systems analyst, structured, methodical, a little too in love with routines. Emily's a pediatric nurse. Warm, intuitive, with a smile that used to make strangers relax. Used to. I first sensed something different on a Tuesday, of all days. It wasn't dramatic. No lipstick on a collar. No drunken confessions. Just a single glance, misaligned, evasive. We were sitting on the couch watching one of those Netflix thrillers she normally devoured. I noticed she wasn't watching. Her eyes weren't following the screen. They were flickering, rapid, calculating. Her body was there, close enough for me to touch, but her thoughts were miles away. "You okay?" I asked casually. She blinked, then smiled that quick, efficient smile. "Yeah, just tired. Long shift." That could have been it. The end of the moment. But something lingered, an invisible crack across the surface. Subtle but growing. We used to talk. About everything. Our jobs, our friends, our plans for the future. Lately, conversations felt transactional. Groceries, bills, reminders to take out the trash. We shared a bed, but not a life. Then came the wine night. Every other Friday, we hosted what we called no-pressure dinners. Just me, Emily, and our closest friends, Kevin and Laura. Kevin was my best friend since college. We met freshman year when he spilled his drink on my laptop and, oddly enough, offered to replace it. He never did. But he bought me a beer the next week, and somehow, we clicked. Emily adored Kevin. They shared a similar sense of humor. Fast, sarcastic, often layered with movie quotes I could never keep up with. Laura was quieter, more reserved. I always thought she balanced Kevin's loudness well. That particular Friday felt no different. The wine flowed, the food was decent, and laughter filled the space like it used to. But something caught my eye, something fleeting. Emily reached for the bottle at the same time Kevin did. Their hands brushed. Not unusual. But neither of them pulled away. Not right away. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. But in that moment, I saw something. A hesitation. A quiet spark. I chalked it up to paranoia. Maybe I was overanalyzing. I did that sometimes. I told myself it was nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more of those nothings. A slight pause before answering her phone. Her smiles delayed, as if pre-scripted. The way Kevin started texting less in our usual group chat. But Emily's phone always seemed to buzz more often than mine. Still, I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I observed. I cataloged. Like a man watching the tide pull away from the shore and wondering if a storm was coming. Then one night, I came home earlier than usual. I was supposed to work late. A server issue had been resolved faster than expected, so I headed home thinking I'd surprise her. I let myself in quietly, expecting to find her in the kitchen or maybe asleep on the couch. But the house was silent. Lights were off. I heard voices upstairs, low, muffled. One was hers. The other, I couldn't place. It was male, but not clear. The tone was familiar. Almost too familiar. I stood frozen in the entryway. Part of me wanted to call out. Part of me didn't. The voices stopped abruptly. I heard movement. A door shutting. Then, just her footsteps coming down the stairs. "Michael," she called. I stepped out from the shadow of the hallway. "Yeah, got home early." She paused at the base of the stairs, her smile too bright. "Oh, that's great." But her eyes, they darted briefly past me, toward the door I hadn't opened, toward the room I hadn't seen. And I knew, with terrifying clarity, that something was wrong. I didn't ask her who was upstairs. I didn't march up there myself. I simply walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, as if nothing about this evening was unusual. Because in that moment, I wasn't interested in a confrontation. I was interested in confirmation. Emily followed me, her steps deliberately casual, but there was a strain in her voice when she spoke. "You're home early," she repeated, a little too brightly. "Everything okay at work?" I nodded slowly, watching her over the rim of the glass. "Yeah, they resolved the database error quicker than expected. Figured I'd skip the takeout and come home." She leaned against the counter, hands tucked beneath her arms. I was just getting ready for bed. That was her version of control. Shut the evening down, and I'd follow. But I wasn't playing along. Were you on the phone earlier? I asked, keeping my voice even. Her eyes flickered. Yeah, just Laura. She had a rough day? I nodded again. She okay? A small pause. Yeah, just venting about Kevin, mostly. I let the silence grow between us again. Not in a threatening way. I wanted to see how long she could sit with it. Eventually, she offered a small laugh. You're quiet tonight. Just thinking. Her smile faltered, but she didn't ask what about. She knew. Or at least, she feared she did. That night in bed, she curled into me the way she used to. Arms around my chest, face pressed to my shoulder. Her breath was steady, warm, but it didn't feel like closeness. It felt like camouflage, and I let her stay there, unmoving, my eyes open in the dark. The next day, I called Kevin. Beer tonight. I asked casually. Thought you had that big code push. Moved it to next week. You free? He hesitated, barely. Yeah, let's do it. We met at the usual dive bar, same booth near the back, far from the televisions and noise. Kevin showed up with that easy swagger he always had. Like the world owed him something, and he was just waiting for it to show up. We talked about work, old college memories, even football. He was animated, relaxed. But his eyes? They never once asked about Emily. Not even in passing. That was strange. Kevin always asked about Emily. How's Em? Tell her I said hey. Little things. That's what was missing. The little things. That silence again. When I brought her up casually. Emily's been working a ton lately. He nodded too quickly, like he was relieved I had mentioned her first. Yeah, hospitals are slammed right now. But he didn't ask how she was. He didn't ask when we should all hang out again. He pivoted, fast. I watched him carefully. Not suspicious. Analytical. Kevin wasn't stupid. He was many things. Reckless, cocky, careless with money. But he wasn't stupid. If something had happened between him and Emily, he would cover it well. Unless he didn't know I suspected anything. I'm thinking about taking a couple days off, I said eventually. He perked up. Vacation? Maybe. Or just time to regroup. Clear my head a bit. Kevin leaned back, rubbing his jaw. That's probably smart, man. We all need that sometimes. I smiled. Yeah. Figure I'll go somewhere quiet. No distractions. His beer hovered midair for a second before he took a sip. Then he asked, You going alone? That was the first crack. It was subtle. A normal question, right? But it didn't feel normal. There was something beneath it. Not curiosity, concern. Yeah, I said slowly. Emily's working doubles all week. Won't notice I'm gone. Kevin chuckled. She always did bury herself in her job when things got stressful. That sentence hung in the air. A statement loaded with too much familiarity. It wasn't wrong, but it also wasn't his to say. I didn't respond. I just let him sit with that echo. When we parted ways, he clapped my back like always. Let me know when you're back, he said. I never left, I replied. He gave me a look, puzzled. But I didn't explain. Let him think about that one. That night, I didn't tell Emily where I had been. She didn't ask. Instead, she sat beside me on the couch, absently scrolling through her phone. I glanced over once and saw a new name at the top of a text thread. M.J. That was it. Just initials. I said nothing. Not yet. But my thoughts started racing, and not in the way most betrayed husbands think. I didn't imagine them in bed together. I didn't stew in rage. No, I began mapping out the pattern. The inconsistencies. The little details. I wasn't looking for punishment. I was looking for the truth. Because the truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. And this, whatever it was no longer just about silence. It was about the spaces between the silence. And I was going to fill them. Saturday morning, Emily woke up before me. She used to linger in bed, wrapped up in sheets and half-asleep smiles. But not lately. Lately, she moved like someone with obligations elsewhere. Even her hair smelled different now, like a shampoo we didn't own. I listened as she padded across the floor, quietly gathering her things for the day. I kept my eyes closed, breathing slow. She didn't know I was awake. I wanted to hear what she said when no one was listening. But she said nothing. Just the soft shuffle of clothes, a cabinet creaking, the front door closing with practiced gentleness. She was good at leaving without notice. I waited 15 minutes before getting out of bed. I wasn't following her. I wasn't a detective. But I needed to verify one thing. In the bathroom, her phone charger was gone. Emily never took it to work. She kept one there already. I made a pot of coffee and stared at the empty space on the counter where her charger had lived for years. A small thing. A subtle shift. But it meant she wasn't going to the hospital. I didn't call her. Didn't ask. I had already begun to realize something vital. When people feel safe lying to you, it's because you've made it easy. She thought I wouldn't notice. Or if I did, I wouldn't say anything. She was half right. Instead of chasing her down, I went for a drive. Windows down, crisp fall air pouring in. The kind of morning that used to feel full of potential. I ended up at a spot Kevin and I used to hike in our 20s, before marriage, before adult responsibilities diluted our friendship into weekend beers and fantasy football drafts. I parked, grabbed a notepad from the glove box, and sat under a tree. I didn't plan to write anything. But once I started, I couldn't stop. I listed every moment that had felt off in the last 3 months. Then 6 months. Then a year. The first entry was her smile at Kevin's joke during one of our dinners. Too wide. Too easy. Then came a series of vague work stories, sudden mood changes, uncharacteristic defensiveness when I asked benign questions. I sketched timelines. Patterns. My hands were steady, my thoughts clear. It wasn't obsession. It was analysis. And the most consistent variable? Kevin. Always Kevin. But what chilled me wasn't just the possibility of betrayal. It was how I had missed it. Not because I was naive, but because I trusted both of them to their core. That's the real wound betrayal opens. Not anger, but disorientation. When you realize the people you love the most have been coordinating behind your back, even the air feels unfamiliar. That afternoon, Emily returned home carrying groceries. She called my name as she came through the door, like nothing was amiss. I stepped into the kitchen and offered a smile. Get everything you needed? I asked. Yeah, she said too quickly. Trader Joe's was packed. Long shift. She blinked. Oh yeah? Brutal. I had to stay late. Funny, I said, walking toward her. I drove past the hospital. Your car wasn't there. Her breath caught, only slightly, barely enough to notice. But I noticed. She forced a laugh. I parked a block away. Overflow lot. I let the silence stretch again. Then I said, I didn't know Trader Joe's was next to the overflow lot. She didn't respond. Just busied herself putting things away. I didn't push. Not yet. I was watching her now the way one watches a slow-moving avalanche, mesmerized by the inevitable crash. That night, I waited until she was asleep. Her breathing was rhythmic, steady. I picked up her phone from the nightstand. The passcode hadn't changed. I didn't open messages or photos. I checked her calendar. Next Saturday, workshop, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. She never mentioned it. I tapped the entry. No location. No notes. Just that single word, workshop. I smiled to myself, set the phone back, and returned to bed. Whatever game she was playing, she had forgotten who she married. I wasn't the type to rage. I wasn't the type to accuse. I was the type to wait. And waiting, as she would soon learn, was far more dangerous. Every relationship reaches a point where pretending becomes part of the routine. Smiles on autopilot, brief touches in passing, polite questions with scripted answers. That's where Emily and I were. We weren't married anymore. We were maintaining an illusion. It was midweek when I noticed something new. Emily had begun using the guest bathroom instead of ours. When I asked why, she said the main shower took too long to heat up. The next morning, I tested it. The water was hot in under a minute. I didn't say anything. That evening, Kevin texted me. Poker night this Friday. You in? The message was unexpected. He hadn't reached out directly in weeks. I replied, sure. Where? My place. Usual time. So casual. Like nothing was off. Like we were still friends. Friday night, I drove over with a six-pack and a stomach full of unease. His wife, Laura, answered the door. She looked tired, her smile faint and brief. He's in the back, she said. The house looked the same, but it felt like a museum, well-kept, cold, and hollow. Kevin greeted me with his usual charm. Cards, drinks, laughter, like the old days. But every time his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of something. Not guilt exactly. Something worse, calculation. After the game, as the others left, Kevin walked me out to the porch. The night was quiet, the sky scattered with stars. You good, man? He asked, leaning on the railing. Yeah. Why? You seem different. Lot on my mind. He hesitated. Emily, why do you ask? He shrugged. Just wondering. You guys always seemed solid. We were. He looked away, then back. She's still working late shifts? I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, you ever lie to Laura? He blinked. What? Little lies. Like where you are, who you're with. His smile faltered. Okay, what is this? Nothing. Just two friends talking. But we weren't friends anymore. Not really. That night, back home, Emily was asleep. Her phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. She was comfortable now, confident I wasn't looking. That was the difference between us. She thought I wouldn't act. But I wasn't blind. I was quiet. The next morning, as we sipped coffee, she mentioned it casually. I might go to that workshop today. The one from your calendar? She paused, surprised. You looked at it? You left it open. She recovered quickly. It's a pediatric seminar. I nodded. Sounds productive. I'll be back around 4. Sure, I said, smiling. Drive safe. She smiled, relieved. Like she'd just dodged something. But there was no seminar. No pediatric anything. And at 4, she wouldn't be coming home alone. By the time Saturday morning came, I had already made my decision. Emily left the house at 9:15 a.m., dressed in casual layers, too polished for a workshop. She wore perfume, something floral she hadn't used in years. The kind of scent you choose for someone, not for a lecture hall. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before I moved. No panic. No rush. I wasn't following her. I had no interest in chasing shadows. I was only confirming what I already knew. Instead, I went to the garage and opened the overhead cabinet where we stored old holiday decorations. I wasn't after ornaments. I kept a small box there, things I had held onto over the years without knowing why. Bank statements, receipts, a couple of anniversary cards I had never thrown out. One card stood out. From Kevin. To Mike and Em, my favorite couple. If I ever find someone half as amazing as you two, I'll consider myself lucky. That was from 5 years ago. He found someone, all right. And she was half of us. I left the garage and returned inside. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like a paused recording of a life that had already ended. At 10:17 a.m., her location updated on the family app. Downtown. Not near the hospital. Not near any conference center either. At 10:42, the location disappeared completely. She'd disabled sharing. I laughed softly. There it was. The mistake. When someone hides what was never questioned, it's a confession. And I just received mine. I spent the afternoon doing what I usually did, laundry, emails, light cleaning. Not because I needed to, but because I refused to let her betrayal disrupt my own habits. I would not become reactionary. At 4:21 p.m., she walked through the front door. Her makeup was freshened. Her hair slightly tousled. The perfume lingered. She didn't speak right away. I didn't look up from my laptop. Hey, she said, as if she'd just come back from a dentist appointment. Hey, I replied evenly. She moved past me, setting her bag down. The seminar was decent. Nothing groundbreaking. I clicked the mouse without looking at her. Learn anything? She hesitated. Some stuff about childhood anxiety. New protocols. You know. I finally looked up. Did they have you sign in? She blinked. Huh. Most seminars have registration. Proof of attendance. Did you get a certificate? She paused, then said, Oh, no, it wasn't that formal. Shame, I said, with a small smile. I was hoping you'd bring something back. She didn't reply, just gave me a tired smile and walked upstairs. That night, I lay awake beside her again. I watched the rise and fall of her breathing. I wondered if she lay awake, too. Wondered if guilt ever kept her up the way suspicion did me. At 1:14 a.m., I quietly rose and went downstairs. I opened the email I'd been composing in my drafts. To Laura Reynolds. Subject, a question. Hi Laura. I hope this doesn't come across as strange. I just need to ask one question, and I promise I'll never bring it up again if I'm wrong. Has Kevin ever given you a reason not to trust him? Michael. I hovered over the send button. Then I clicked it. And just like that, I stopped waiting for the truth. I started reaching for it. Sunday came with cloudy skies and a stillness that didn't feel natural. Emily stayed in bed longer than usual, claiming a headache. I offered to make her tea. She declined. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I didn't press. I didn't need to anymore. By noon, I got the reply I wasn't sure would ever come. From Laura Reynolds. Subject, a question. Michael. Yes. Laura. That was it. No details. No embellishment. Just 3 letters that confirmed everything I had suspected and feared. A word as sharp and quiet as a knife slipping under the skin. Yes. It was odd how calm I felt. There was no rage. No urge to scream or destroy something. I simply set my phone down, walked to the window, and stared out into the street. I could hear Emily moving around upstairs, opening drawers, walking lightly, like she was trying not to wake something. She was right. It had already awakened. I went into the garage, not to escape, but to prepare. I kept a box there labeled important. Inside were our marriage certificate, some tax records, and a folder I hadn't touched in years, our prenup. When we got married, I had insisted on it. Emily had called it cold. I called it precaution. Neither of us thought we'd ever need it. Turns out, it was the smartest thing I'd ever done. Back inside, I calmly cooked lunch. When Emily came down, her face registered surprise. "You cooked?" she asked, trying to smile. "Yeah. Figured we could eat together." We sat down across from each other like polite strangers. I passed her the salad. She passed me the dressing. The clink of cutlery was the only sound between us. Halfway through the meal, she said, "You're different lately." "How so?" "Colder. Detached." "Maybe I'm just waking up," I said without looking up. She froze for a second, then said, "Is there something we need to talk about?" I met her eyes. Should there be? Her lips parted slightly, but she said nothing, just shook her head and focused on her plate. Later that evening, I took a walk. The streets were quiet, golden leaves scattered like coins across the sidewalk. I ended up outside Kevin's house. His lights were on. His car was parked outside. I didn't knock. I didn't want a confrontation. Not yet, but I didn't want him to see me. I stood across the street for several minutes, just watching. Eventually, he stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand. He looked up, and our eyes locked. He froze. I didn't move. No anger in my face. No accusation. Just the weight of knowing. Then I turned and walked away. Back home, Emily was in the kitchen, scrolling her phone. "I'm going to bed," I said. She looked up, startled. "Already? Long day." She didn't follow. That night, for the first time since all this began, I slept soundly. Not because anything had been fixed, but because there was no more pretending. The cracks weren't hidden anymore. They were all in plain view. By Monday, I had begun creating distance, not with anger, not with arguments, just with silence. Controlled, intentional silence. Emily noticed. I could see it in the way she lingered near the kitchen when I walked in. The way she asked simple questions like she was trying to bait a conversation back to life. "How was your meeting?" she asked that evening. "It happened," I replied, pulling food from the fridge. She watched me for a second. "You're being short with me." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have the words, but because she already knew the answer. The following morning, I left the house earlier than usual. I had an appointment with a family lawyer. A friend of a friend. Discreet. Experienced. I wanted to understand my options before making any move. She reviewed the prenup, glanced at my notes, and leaned back in her chair. "This is airtight," she said. "If infidelity is confirmed, it favors you heavily." I nodded. "Do you want to proceed with a divorce?" "I'm considering it," I said. "But not yet." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're planning something?" "I'm watching something," I corrected. Back home, Emily had left for work. Or said she did. I no longer took anything at face value. Later that evening, I got a text from Laura. He confessed. After I told him I knew, he broke. "It's been going on for months." "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, the final puzzle piece snapping into place. Kevin hadn't just failed me as a friend. He'd hollowed out the foundation of 2 homes. His wife's. Mine. And still, there was no rage. Just a weight. A tired sort of finality. That night, when Emily returned, I was waiting in the living room. She seemed surprised. "You're up late." I nodded. I needed time to think. She sat across from me slowly, eyes cautious. "About." I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw a version of her I didn't recognize. One that had been wearing a mask for far too long. "Are you happy?" I asked. She blinked. "What? Are you happy with us?" She hesitated, then gave a weak smile. "We've had a rough patch, but we can fix it." I held her gaze. "Can we?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence between us was not uncomfortable, it was honest. Finally, she whispered, "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer right away. Because it was a complicated question. I loved the version of her that used to hold my hand for no reason. The one who danced with me in the kitchen. But that woman had vanished sometime last year. I don't know, I said quietly. She nodded, her eyes damp. But still, she didn't confess. She didn't ask forgiveness. Not yet. That told me everything I needed. I stood. I'm going for a drive. She didn't stop me. And that night, I didn't come home. I returned the next morning. The air between us was different now. There was no more pretending. Emily knew I was pulling away. What she didn't know, what she never expected, was that I had already heard the truth. From Laura. From Kevin's silence. From her own hesitation. I didn't speak to her right away. I made breakfast, ate alone, and left for work without saying goodbye. That evening, she waited for me in the living room, legs tucked under her, nervous energy radiating off her like heat from a slow-burning fire. I want to talk, she said softly. I stood in the doorway, not sitting. Now. She nodded. I think it's time. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. She had finally decided to speak, but I already knew what was coming. I've made mistakes, she began, her hands clasped in her lap. And I haven't been fair to you. I said nothing. Let her keep digging. She looked away for a moment, then back at me. There's something you deserve to know. About me. About Kevin. Still, I said nothing. I watched the mask come off. We didn't plan it, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to happen. How long? I asked calmly. 7 months. I nodded once. And before that? She blinked. Before, you two were always close. Laughing at things I didn't hear. Taking walks when I was grilling. Before that. Her face tightened. It started last fall. I swear. I'm not asking for your swearing, Emily. I'm asking for honesty. She looked down at her hands. Maybe I had feelings before. I didn't act on them. I walked further into the room. So he didn't pursue you. You were already halfway there. She flinched. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught. No, she said quickly. That's not fair. I stared at her for a long moment. Did you ever plan to tell me? She hesitated, then whispered, no. That word cut deeper than anything else. I sat down across from her. The room felt too quiet. I asked you last night if you were happy, I said. You never answered. She swallowed. I was confused. Were you in love with him? Her breath caught. I don't know. I nodded. You loved being wanted. You loved the thrill. But you didn't think about what would happen when I found out. She looked down, ashamed now. I already know everything, I said. Laura told me. Kevin confessed. You've both admitted it. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for clarity. She wiped at her eyes. So what now? I leaned back. That depends on you. Her eyes widened. Me? I want to know if you're ready to stop lying. Not to me. To yourself. She didn't respond. After a long silence, I said, Emily, if you want this marriage, you'll need to rebuild it brick by brick. And I won't carry more than my share. She looked up, surprised. You're not leaving me? I was ready to. I had the papers drawn up. Her lips parted, stunned. But then I asked myself one question. Have I ever truly needed revenge? She shook her head slowly. I don't deserve forgiveness. You don't, I said. But that's what makes it forgiveness. She broke down, shoulders trembling. No more words, no more defenses. And I sat with her, quietly, just for a while. Not because everything was fixed, but because sometimes mercy speaks louder than betrayal. The days that followed were quieter than before, but not because things were unspoken. Quite the opposite. The silence between us had changed. It was no longer the tense stillness of secrets, but the kind that follows a storm. The kind where two people sit in the wreckage, unsure where to begin. Emily moved through the house carefully, as if afraid to touch anything. She spoke less, not because she didn't want to, but because every word now came with weight. There was no more casual, no more autopilot. We sat together in the evenings, sometimes on opposite sides of the couch. Other times, not at all. She tried to bridge the distance with small gestures, making my coffee the way I liked it, folding my laundry instead of just hers. I accepted the efforts, but never responded with praise. Not yet. I wasn't there. She started attending therapy. Alone. She didn't tell me at first, but I saw the calendar entry on her phone. Dr. Hargrove, for PMM. I didn't bring it up. I let her come to me when she was ready. A week later, she did. I've been seeing someone, she said, sitting beside me on the porch. A therapist. I nodded. Good. I needed to start by figuring out what I was really chasing with him. I looked at her. And what was it? Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Validation. That I wasn't boring. That someone still saw me. And did he? She shook her head. He saw opportunity. Not me. I turned back toward the yard. And what do you see now? You, she said. Not the husband. Not the routine. Just you. I let that settle between us. She didn't push for more. She didn't ask me to forgive her again. She just sat there, finally learning to be still. Later that evening, I found the folder, the divorce paperwork I'd prepared but never filed. I took it out and laid it on the kitchen table. When Emily saw it, she froze. I'm not filing it, I said. Her voice was small. But you haven't shredded it either. No, I replied. It stays. As a reminder of how close we came. She walked over slowly, hands trembling. Why are you still here? I met her eyes. Because I've never believed that love is a straight line. But I do believe it's a choice. And you're still choosing me? I'm choosing truth, I said. And if you can live there, then maybe I can stay too. She didn't touch me. She didn't say thank you. Instead, she did something better. She sat down beside me. Quietly, as if starting over didn't require grand gestures, just presence. We didn't go back to how things were. We began something new, something smaller, slower, honest. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone on that couch. It's been 6 months since Emily told me the truth. Since I saw Kevin's eyes across that porch and chose not to destroy him. Since I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to stop carrying her mistake as if it were mine. People ask what forgiveness feels like. It feels like stillness after a storm. Not peace. Not joy. Just stillness. A kind of quiet that's no longer suspicious, but reflective. A quiet that lets you breathe again without looking over your shoulder. Emily and I never went back to what we were. That version of us died in silence and small lies. But something else began to take root. We cook dinner together now. Not every night, but often. We talk. Not just about bills or groceries, but about real things, what scares us, what we regret, what we hope never to lose again. She's continued therapy, and I've gone with her a few times. Not for reconciliation, not for blame, just to understand the damage done and what it would take to build something stronger on the ashes. Kevin, I haven't spoken to him since that night on the porch. Laura filed for divorce 3 months ago. I heard he moved out, changed jobs. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. But I also don't miss him. Some people leave your life like a wound. Others like a weight. He was both. There are still moments when it creeps back. A late night when I roll over in bed and find her staring at the ceiling. A missed call from an unknown number. A sudden silence when I walk into a room. But those moments pass. Because now, when I ask a question, she answers. Now, when I leave the house, she hugs me like she means it. And now, when I look at her, I don't see the betrayal first. I see the woman who stayed when it would have been easier to run. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It didn't arrive like sunlight breaking through clouds. It came in layers. In coffee cups left out in the morning. In hands that hesitated before touching mine. In the slow, steady rebuilding of trust. Some scars remain. But scars are proof of healing, not reminders of damage. Today, I walk through the house and no longer feel haunted. Our bedroom is ours again. The living room doesn't echo with unspoken tension. The guest bathroom, the one she used to sneak off to, is just a bathroom again. People ask why I stayed. Why I forgave her. The truth? Because I didn't want to become someone who let pain define him. Because I remembered the woman she used to be and saw glimmers of her returning. Because strength isn't always in walking away. Sometimes it's in staying. On your own terms. With your eyes wide open. And because in the end, love, real love, isn't just about loyalty. It's about grace.